for local councils and police to successfully resolve and combat. And obviously, the reasons being are self-evident. By the time the police get there or local council officers get there, the people riding these devices have long since left the scene. So it's really difficult. But there was some work done, I think, by the local MP, Mike Wood, and local councillors in the Brockmore and Pensnet area to try and negate this issue and this problem.
Yes.
And they had I forget what the phrase was, but I think it was some sort of order that prevented people using these quad bikes or bikes, motorbikes, on open spaces such as Fens Pool, Nature Reserve, etc.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they have this order in place, it does allow the police to confiscate these vehicles and crush them. Now, that's easier said than done. You have to combat this, you have to catch the people in the act. You have to catch them red-handed, take the vehicles off them. However, I was at the King Swingford, Worsley and Wallheath Community Forum a couple of weeks ago, and a police officer did express to the people that attended that night that actually they had apprehended someone on one of these devices and that the device had in fact been crushed.
Oh.
So it can be frustrating for residents because you're hearing these bikes whirl around night after night, but when we can catch them along with our partners in the police, then we can take decisive action, which is to crush these vehicles, and it serves them right.
Good. Can you tell us about CCTV and the upgrading of the equipment we've got?
We've got CCTV. We made a clear commitment in the run-up to the local elections that we would invest in trying to protect our citizens. When you see the increase in knife crime and you see some of our young people being dragged into the most horrendous lifestyles with drugs and knives, and you know, in our day, if you had a disturbance or a fight on the streets, you'd have a few fisticuffs, you'd come off the worst, you'd probably go back in the pub and buy the other bloke a drink, or vice versa. These days it's so much more hideous, sinister and far more serious.
Yes.
And people, particularly young people, are losing their lives. One key element in trying to combat this and bring people to task and to justice is to have good CCTV strategically placed around the borough to protect our citizens against crime. And I believe if the cameras are there and they work and they're good, it's one deterrent. It won't stop it overall, but it is one means of a deterrent to combat crime in the borough. And we're investing £1.7 million, which is not an insignificant sum, but it's much needed. There's a lot of our cameras are out of date, they're not fit for purpose, and our job is to try and make our citizens feel more secure when they're walking on our streets.
Definitely. I was glad to see actually that they'd taken the knife arch. The police had taken it to Halesome bus station this week. Yeah. And it was nice to see it there for the kids to, and not only kids, to go through to check them out. I don't know if they had any success. I don't know if you've also seen the knife angel that's been outside Birmingham
I have seen
Council.
It, yes.
Now that is a stunning piece of artwork. But
it
that's
is
made up of knives. It's perhaps 20 feet tall, made up of knives that have been seized in the West Midlands.
Shocking, but it's a sad fact of life these days that the knife crime's so much more prevalent than it was many years ago.
Definitely. We've got another one just come in. Let's get it up. This is from Susan Ann. Briley Hill lost a leisure centre and never got one back. What leisure facilities are planned for Briley Hill? We have plenty of private expensive facilities, but nothing locally.
Okay, that's Susan?
Susan, yes.
Okay, Susan. Part of our review of leisure services, as I've said earlier, is to provide 3 leisure centres strategically placed across the borough, a refurbished Stairbridge, refurbished Halesome 1, and a new one that borders Dudley / Briley Hill. It will be on quite near to the Dudley Southern bypass. That means it will be accessible to residents from Briley Hill.
Yep.
It's not the same as having a leisure centre slap bang in the middle of Briley Hill, but unfortunately, as time has moved on, the metro will be swinging around where the old leisure centre used to be. So it's a key strategic point for the metro. Doesn't give you a leisure centre directly in Briley Hill, but The new one in Dudley, which will be on the border of on the Dudley Southern Bypass, will serve Brightly Hill residents quite well because it is a short car journey or a bus ride away. And that will be a lot easier to get to than the current one in Wellington Road.
And there certainly will be bus routes there that they
Absolutely.
can use. Yes. We've got now another one coming in. This is about housing, and this is from Abdul Wahid. I have a big complaint about your housing manager and his staff and the way they have treated my family.
Okay, I think with that one, if it's quite a personal issue and case and affects people in a quite personal manner, in which that does, then what I would say is to email Ask the Leader, which I think on the Facebook page, the email address is there. Email that, Abdul, and we will get officers to get back to you and deal with this case, because that's quite sensitive. So I think there's a lot of data here that's quite personal, so I wouldn't want to read that out live on Facebook.
He does actually say that he would prefer to speak
That's
face
fine.
to face.
That's fine. I'm quite happy to meet up with him if officers can arrange that.
Yeah, good. And we're waiting for some more to come in.
Okay.
Meanwhile, perhaps we could talk about the Portersfield, the Portersfield build-up around the bus station, Cavendish House area.
Cavendish House hopefully starts to be demolished, like demolition, come September.
Yeah.
We've got the building, hopefully, the work will start again within 6 months on the new bus interchange. It's much needed, it's tired, it's not fit for purpose. We're giving something to our residents that will be fantastic. Fantastic new bus station, metro, and a completely new, either mixture of residential and retail and leisure development, which we now call Portersfield. And I think that will totally transform the town.
Mm-hmm.
I think with that and a revamped Churchill precinct, which again has seen better days. And I remember Churchill precinct as a young lad when we had the Winston Churchill glass mural in all its splendour. It'd be nice to get the precinct back to its heyday.
Yes.
And whether that's a mix of residential and retail, but we certainly need to breathe new life into it. And I think those two things, by getting the Portersfield development up and running, metro, the new bus interchange, and the Churchill precinct, I think we will totally transform Dudley Town Centre. It'll breathe new life into the marketplace, which again has seen some improvements, but nowhere near enough for my liking and other people within the council. We need to have a busier market, but we need to give the town centre that footfall, and we won't get that footfall until we start to see some of these key developments not only talked about but actually delivered.
Mark Byrne, please help. I see daily the disabled elderly mothers with pushchairs and vulnerable people being made to feel that they don't belong to Stourbridge Town Centre. We need to creative think and not gallant disregard. I know that the Stourbridge Town Centre itself has got very narrow footpaths. I know that from my own time there. I presume that's what he's saying, that the cars are parked in the streets and the footpaths are so narrow that the mothers with pushchairs struggle.
Okay, if that's what Mark's referring to, great, we can talk about that. If it's not, then if Mark can get back in touch and send another email or question over to us to clarify, then great. But on that issue of the pavement being blocked, the highway being blocked, it's clearly, if you can't get a pushchair through or a wheelchair, then it is an offence.
Yep.
And that's where our partners, the police, come into it.
Yes.
We are looking at all sorts of avenues where we can try and increase the enforcement on parking. It's not fair that people block the public highway so people can't get past. Whether you're able-bodied or whether you have wheelchair use or whether you're elderly and you're struggling, it's not fair that you have to walk into the road to get past a vehicle.
Totally agree.
So we're looking at ways where we can increase the number of people that we have either in our enforcement team or using other partners like we have with Litter, which has been very successful. Mm-hmm. So we are working on it at the moment. It's a key initiative for us to work on. So I'm hopeful that by the year end we can deliver on that and make the lives of the residents that I think Mark was referring to, make their lot just that little bit better by being able to gain access to the high street without having to step into busy roads.
Good. David Austin says Kingdom Services, that's our enforcing,
That is what I've just mentioned, yes.
are active in Stourbridge and Halesowen. Can they be directed to the Lie?
Okay. If David wants to email me specifics, then I'll make sure. If there are numerous hot spots
Yes.
where residents feel that we ought to have that team there because of litter and other blights on the landscape, then please email us and we'll make sure that we can direct services to there. And of course, it's key that people like David get in touch, because sometimes we can't have eyes and ears everywhere, and we depend on residents to inform us where we need to direct some of those resources.
This is also from David Austin. I
Okay.
presume it's the same one, saying that we've got dog fouling down by the doctor's surgery. And,
Okay.
and people are not only being upset by that, but the owners of the dogs are being abusive and shouting and using foul language at the same time.
Okay. Again, David emails me the specifics of that. We'll make sure that officers can get down there. And obviously, if we can, we'll catch these people in the act and make sure that they get appropriately, have the enforcement and get punished accordingly. It's not
Correct.
right that, I'm a dog walker. It's not right
me.
that and I know you are as well, it's not right that they are irresponsible and just leave their dog mess for other people to pick up.
Correct. Still waiting for some more to come through, folks, if you want to keep putting them through. You want to explain to us about the SEND Ofsted inspection?
Yeah, SEND Ofsted inspection due to go live on Friday. Some good news in there, but obviously some not so good news where, as an authority, we can do a lot better. And the team since then have met with parents, carers, service users and staff and a wide range of partners. And of course their report confirmed much of what we already knew. Pleased to see that some of the provision and some of the outstanding staff have been recognised in that report. But we know our delivery needs need to be more consistent.
Yeah.
And we know that our work to identify areas for this development has already brought about quite a few positive changes, which was also recognised by the inspectors. But now we have to ensure our action plan takes account of all the feedback in the report. And unlike where you have this, where other authorities say, yes, we note the contents of the report and we'll try and adhere to it, what we have to do is make sure that we do adhere to those recommendations in the report and deliver, because it's not right that some of these kids are left without a placement for September. I know that the cabinet member herself is working extremely hard to try and guarantee that every one of those young people will have a place at school by September. I know that she's met with quite a few of those parents as individuals. Yes. And a lot of these issues are resolved by just communication, by just talking. And that's one thing that Councillor Buttery is good at, is communicating, going out there, meeting people. Even when the council has possibly failed to maintain its usual high standards, she is good at getting out there and communicating as to why we failed and to how we put it right.
I know I attended a meeting that she did with one of the parents, and the parent came away pleased that we were actually listening to what she had to say, face to face, and we were going to do something.
And that results eases quite a lot of attention on these issues, which are very emotive and very important to those individuals. But of course, if you're listening and talking to people, then you can resolve a lot of the problems.
Yeah. Back to swimming. This one, Mark Allen. You have many programmes in weekdays. Children times for swimming in term time is reduced to the weekends and only has tight time slots. So what are you saying is a tad contradictory? You would have more kids swimming in term times if the time slots were opened up.
Okay, what I would say to Mark is I can't argue with you. I don't have those slots or those timetables available in front of me, but I will go away and check. And if we can tweak that and improve it to create more time slots, then great. The whole concept of this free swimming is to make more children use our leisure centres.
Definitely.
We don't want to go back to the 70s and 80s where kids, particularly my age in the 70s, were using places like the donkey pool or the local canal to swim in. I know our canals are a lot cleaner than they were in the 70s, but we do not want to go back to those days. So take the point that the gentleman's raised, and if we can improve those slots, then yes, we will, because that's what it's about, getting more provision for children to swim.
Tony Sheldon. Hi Patrick, it's great to hear about the much needed £2 million upgrade on the CCTV camera. My question is, I understand that some of the cameras will be mobile. How does this work? Will the council decide on their temporary location, or can community groups request this to monitor hotspots? Are they in vans or can they be temporarily fixed?
Without knowing the greater detail of this, Tony, I think the way it currently works are there are some mobile units. I think we work in conjunction with our partners, West Midlands Police, particularly with the mobile ones. A lot of them will be fixed, particularly around town centres. However, what I would say is if there is a particular issue in a particular part of our borough where we need CCTV, then we need to know from those community groups, and obviously we need to try and do something about it. What did happen over Christmas, it was reported that a lot of our cameras were out of action for quite a while over the Christmas period. And with a lot of revellers having excess alcohol, etc., it's important that we can have those cameras working to try and ensure the safety of our communities. Clearly, that wasn't happening over the Christmas period. The idea of spending this £1.7 million is to enhance that security and enhance the safety of our residents. But a few technical questions there from Tony, so I'll need to go back and check on that. So if we can just make a note of that one, because I think he raises some interesting in important points.
Susan Ann again. Are the council planning in any recreation facilities for the people of Pensnet and Brierley Hill? We had a park a few years ago, and now we have nothing for the children and youths to play on. Our nearest one is in Kingswinford or Holly Hall. We are a deprived area and it's desperate for the youth centre and children's based activities.
Okay, I want to place a greater emphasis on leisure and recreational activity. I think it's the one service that all councils look to cut when times get hard. And if you do surveys, residents never put this at their top of their priorities. It's always roads, it's jobs, it's employment, it's council tax increases, sport, leisure, recreation is right down the bottom of people's priorities, except when they don't have many near to them. I know that one of the local councils, Sue Greenaway, has campaigned for many years for the old Coppice, which is on the main, I think it's the main high street opposite the chip shop in Pensnet. She's campaigned many years for that to be tidied up and to be made into a small park stroke play area for the people of Pensnet. So I'd like to sit down with Sue and obviously see how we can progress those plans now that we are back in control.
That would be a good idea. Got a couple coming in now. This one's about fly tipping in the salt wells from Gustav. There was another fly tipping incident in salt wells yesterday, and it was promptly responded to later in the day by 2 members of the Clean and Green Litter Group, which was bagged up and ready for the street cleansing team to collect. That's an important part. The members of the public getting together and doing that. We've come across it once or twice. The previous administration had talked about the possible reintroduction of a former free bulk waste collection service later part of this year to pledge to clean up the borough. Dudley Council currently paid for bulky item scheme is one of the most expensive of any local councils around here, and many people can't use it. Do the new Conservative administration have similar plans for a pilot scheme that might lead to a permanent reintroduction of the old bulk waste collections?
My simple answer to Gustav is no, and I will tell you why that answer is no. The previous administration's plans were flawed. It was a decent suggestion by all means, but they hadn't allocated the funding. The money simply wasn't there to carry out this service. And the way it had been set up, I think would have encouraged more fly tipping, because at the points of where you left your bulk waste, I think that would have become the norm. So for instance, you pick a street in, let's say for instance, Quarrybank, Brierley Hill, Kingswinford, Worsley, whatever area was identified as the focal point for tipping your bulk waste there, I think people, unscrupulous people, would have dumped rubbish there, come what may, at any time of the day, any day of the week, regardless of whether it was a bulk collection or not, and it would have become a massive eyesore. So I think it was fatally flawed for that reason only. I think we operate a very good waste service at the Stourbridge tip. People can also request bulky waste collections, but I think this plan, I'm sorry, but he's dead in the water.
Okay. Paul Winchurch. As the casino on Castle Hill is now having a new building to transfer its business to Castle Gate, what is going to happen to the old building, which is next to the mosque, of course?
I think it's a private building, Paul, so I wouldn't have any idea what they're planning to do with that. Obviously, as buildings become empty, Castle Hill is a key strategic regeneration zone for us. There's a lot happening there. You have obviously the metro, as we've already mentioned quite substantially. You've got the development on the zoo. You have the Black Country Museum with its the largest lottery grant ever given out to a museum, going to the Black Country Living Museum, and you've also got the Innovation Centre and also the was it driverless car centre?
Yes.
Autonomous vehicle centre.
Yes.
Everything happening within that small area of Castle Hill. So what we don't want, quite rightly, is if buildings are being vacated, for them to be left empty for very, very long. But as there is a lot of regeneration happening in that one part of Dudley, I would imagine that the value of buildings there becomes ever more valuable. So I cannot see developers letting that building stay empty for very long. So I can't see us having an empty building on our hands for very, very, very long at all.
I don't believe there's any plans in
and I'm not sure. I mean, Paul may be able to, if he can confirm by emailing again. I thought that the casino had changed its plans to move to Castlegate. I'm not sure, but if you can confirm that was the last rumour I'd heard, but he may be wrong, maybe misled. Got plenty now.
Yes, they're coming in now. Richard Tasker. The market in Dudley has a regular empty stall. Is Tudor Markets doing the best for Dudley Market?
I'll answer Richard quite clearly. I think Tudor Markets are doing their best for Dudley. So much so that we've discussed at Cabinet about renewing their contract. I think they have done a great job with Dudley Market and indeed Stourbridge Market, where they came in at very short notice to rescue that market when it had shut temporarily. And what I would say is that we're faced with very difficult times at the moment where we have to give people a reason to come to Dudley Town Centre. We've provided free two-hour car parking. You have a revamped marketplace. You have lots of development going on Castle Hill. You have proposed developments at Portersfield, Churchill Precinct, Metro and all that. But they need to happen. And what I would say to people like Richard is, have patience, let these developments happen, and you will see the footfall increase. When the footfall increases, that market which has been there for hundreds of years, perhaps 1,000 years, in one form or another, I think that market will have a resurgence with that increased footfall. But it's not going to happen overnight, and we have to hold our nerve, continue to support the market traders, and wait for these developments to happen, where I'm absolutely convinced that the footfall will increase and that marketplace will be busy as it once was again.
Okay. Debbie Collins, is there any extra funding for green care, as local open spaces, flower beds and shrubbery are overgrown and taking over public highways?
Okay, Debbie, I'm a very big advocate of having things such as hanging baskets, flower beds, our green care team going out and weeding to such an extent that when we were last in control in our first budget in February, doing a Boris moment there, in February 2018, we actually increased the budget for green care. Yep. After years of it being cut by successive administrations, we actually increased the budget for green care, and it was specifically to deal with the weeds that were blighting our highways and our streets. When you see weeds obscuring street signs, then it's time to take action.
Yes.
And our administration took action, and I want to do more. I really do want to do more. I'm appalled sometimes when I drive through the borough and I see the weeds that obscure street signs in our roads, and enough's enough. I want to rescind the days where we stopped planting flower beds, stopped having hanging baskets around the town hall and all the civic buildings. I want people to come into Dudley and see it and see what a nice place this borough is.
Yes,
Isn't it a beautiful place? Haven't we got some lovely flower beds? You know, a place like Coronation Gardens, etc. But it shouldn't just be outside the town hall. We need to have, you know, these nice, where it makes people, just gives them a genuine, natural sense of warmth and happiness if the borough looks tidy and pleasant to visit. And
Yes.
we want more people to visit Dudley, and one way to get them to Dudley and visit more, and to visit the zoo, the museum, our glassmaking heritage sites, and our nature reserves across the borough, and our parks and open spaces, is to make sure that when they come to Dudley, it looks appealing. And what the ladies suggest is one initiative that certainly we want to take up.
Certainly the things like that have been done at Halesowen in Bloom, where the public have got together and done little bits of areas in the town, put in some nice flowers. We've got a wildflower patch in the middle of the town centre there, and I think we need more of that.
Yeah, definitely do.
If
Definitely
we
do.
encourage members of the public to come up and do things like that, we'd be doing rather well. Steve Curtin, regarding concrete blocks around open spaces in the Withermore village to stop travellers. At the moment this is working, but I understand these blocks are loaned. Are there any plans to replace these with bollards?
Okay, Steve, I'll answer you very easily. No, there are no plans to replace them with bollards. That will not work. If you get an illegal incursion at 11:30 at night, they will simply rip the bollards out of the ground. Be they wooden ones or concrete ones, they will be ripped out of the ground, and you'll wake up and find you've got an illegal incursion outside your property. We want to avoid that. So for now, the concrete blocks will stay there. What we are doing, we need to find the right site. We believe we had the correct site previously, but the previous Labour administration called a halt to that. And I think because they called a halt to that and the furore that it caused, it would be wrong to resurrect work on that site that we'd identified. So what we are doing now, we are working on a cross-party basis, because I think this has to have the support of both main political groups in Dudley to identify a site so we can have a traveller site in place ready in time for next May for the new traveller season. We're almost at the end of this year's traveller site. By the time we get to September, we have very few incursions after September. So I think we need to work cross-party to find that suitable site and then get on with the job of implementing it and building it. And then we can get rid of the concrete blocks and people can go back, particularly Withermore, etc., to enjoy, their places of natural beauty in parks and open spaces without the fear of these illegal incursions.
Talking about the open spaces again, Pat, we started off with a question from Kate Riggs, but apparently our technical feed managed to knock your answer off. So can you again speak about the salt wells?
I'll just talk about salt wells briefly. I was either didn't hear me or I was upside down on the camera, but for the benefit of Kate and Lucy and anyone else, we've met with the board. Councillors and officers have met with our private sector partners who currently own the land, and everyone is in agreement that that land would be better placed being transferred back into Dudley Council ownership. Don't have a date yet set for that, but rest assured, with everyone now around the table agreeing that the best form is to bring it back into council ownership, then rest assured that is going to happen, and we can restore it as part of the Saltwells Nature Reserve.
Okay.
So I hope that gives them that confidence.
We keep getting the same people answering different questions, but this one is about the main roundabout at the bottom of Castle Hill. It's Richard. Says it's looking tired as a development, and a better way of getting people to enter the borough and seeing a better site.
I'm being flippant here. I take it that roundabout is the one with the giant Scotch eggs.
Ha! Yes.
And I know what before people write, and I do know what they're not Scotch eggs. I do know what they are, and I know what each of the pieces of art symbolise for the borough. It goes on to what I said earlier on about driving through the borough, and you come to, particularly along the Dudley Southern bypass, and you see weeds and it looks unsightly, and you think, well, you know, we want to bring people here. We want to bring ministers here to say, look, Dudley's open for business. We want to attract new investment. And I just think we let ourselves down where we're not doing the basics. And I think we need to go back to that, make the traffic roundabouts attractive. And one way that which we can do that, Dave, is to ask our friends in the private sector to sponsor these islands.
Yes.
And I think if people sponsor these islands, and I know our Barkham's team have done a potentially great job where we can get, you know, up to, you know, 5-figure fees into sponsoring some of our traffic islands. That will bring much needed resource into the council coffers, which hopefully we can then reinvest in making the traffic islands, and of course along our highways, instead of looking overgrown with weeds, we can plant flower beds, we can make them look attractive and make Borough a much more pleasant place to live.
Strangely enough, Richard Tolley says that the Thorns Road, which is the road that leads to Merry Hill, is looking tired and overgrown with weeds, exactly as you said.
Yep.
We are aware of areas like that, and we are trying very hard to do it.
If Richard can just send that email to Ask the Leader, then we can try and get one of the team out there to quickly do a blitz on some of these hotspots.
Okay. This one's about regen,
Okay.
if I can get it up. Paul Winchurch, thanks for your answer about the casino. When all this new investment starts, bus station, metro, Cavendish area, how will the traffic management cope with it all happening at the same time? Hall Street cannot cope at present due to bad traffic light sequences.
Yes, Paul. Difficult question to. Well, it's not a difficult question to answer. I could say it'll be absolute chaos. But when you have massive development, I mean, you're talking almost £1 billion worth of investment in one town centre, then there will be issues with traffic. There will be diversions created. People will spend that little bit longer in traffic queues, but I would ask people to appreciate what the end prize is, and that end prize is, you know, nearly £750 million of investment in Dudley Town Centre. Our town centre, which I'm immensely proud of, Dudley born and bred. I am proud to be from Dudley, but I am not proud of the state of our town centre at present, and I don't buy that its best days are behind it because it looks tired. I believe with all the new investment,
We can do it.
with the jobs, not just us, but our partners out there, with the colleges, Dudley College, with the private sector, the jobs that they're creating are high-tech jobs which are really, really on the curse of the high-tech new developments, such as, driverless cars, battery-operated electric cars, that negate the need for petrol or diesel, the automotive sector of the car industry. We, along with ourselves in Coventry, are leading on this. And I think that new technology, new industries, with the new development, such as a mix of residential, retail and leisure in the town centre, means that Dudley's best days are in front of it, not behind it. But I think we just have to be patient. We will have some frustration for drivers. I have to get to Dudley the majority of the week. I will be one of those stuck in traffic queues. It needs to be managed. We have a good traffic management team. One of the first things to answer, Paul, will be obviously the utilities. They will have to be done first before anything else is done, because what we don't want to do is lay the metro down or build a new shopping centre and then have to dig everything up to put a new gas pipe or electricity or water in. So the utilities will be done first.
And some of them are very old.
Yeah, and then any changes, I would imagine, to major roads, they will be the next focus. But it will be a piece-by-piece project, carefully managed by our traffic guys. It will hopefully minimise the impact to people who have to come through Dudley Town Centre. But there will be disruption. But again, I'd ask Paul and others to think of the price at the end of that disruption. A brand new town centre, fit for the 21st century.
This is back to special needs from Claire Lester. When is the focus in the borough going to be on the children who have special needs? Penns Meadows Special School is not fit for purpose at the Ridge Hill site, and is waiting on funding to build a new one at Tiled House Lane.
I know that I know the head down. I don't know if she's still there. I don't know for many years, and I know they've been looking to possibly move from that site for many years. I know at one point they were looking to buy the empty premises next to the old NHS health buildings, which
Yes.
are no longer used.
Yep.
And obviously that's not gone through. And obviously there is an option to redevelop the old Pensnet School in Tildhouse Lane. I was there at the opening of the annex that Pensmeadow have had at Tildhouse Lane. I was there at the official opening 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's a wonderful service. And if we can help push this along in any way, then I'm happy to personally get involved. What I do dislike as council leader is when local authorities they plan a project, they talk about it, and then we carry on talking about it, and it frustrates me as a council leader. And in the private sector, they tend to talk about it, they have an idea, they have a plan, they talk about it, they go away and get the funding, they put the planning application in, and then it happens. And I want us to be a bit more like that, so that we deliver quickly, not just keep talking.
Yes.
And Claire is quite right, this has been talked about for far too long. So if Claire wants to email me, my council email is quite readily known, rather than the Ask the Leader one, and I'm quite happy to take this up and try and push this with the appropriate people.
Yes, certainly the SEND children are something that I came to the council about. That was my way of coming on the council in 2004, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm former governor of the Briar School, and appreciate the work the governors and staff and parents do with the children at these schools. It's just fantastic. And if we can support in any way, then we will.
This one's about homeless.
Okay.
Anne Cook, what are you going to do with the borough's homeless? Leslie's care packages, run by a lovely lady in Stourbridge, is doing so much.
Okay, what I would say to Anne is we are fortunate in Dudley that we don't have the same issues with homelessness that other authorities do, like Wolverhampton, Sandwell, Birmingham, to the point where there was an initiative run by the West Midlands Mayor Andy Street. We didn't apply for as many placements as other authorities did. And when I was at a combined authority meeting, I asked the question why, whether we were not being ambitious enough, because I think we asked for something like 5 people to be taken off the streets and rehoused and given all the support that they could. But the answer I got was that there wasn't the need there in the borough, and other authorities were asking for 20 and 30, and they obviously had a more dire need of this service than we did. Having said that, we have an excellent homelessness team in the borough. There should be no need for any one person to have a second night out on the streets. Once that team is notified, they quickly get into action and make sure that all the support is given to people who've fallen through that safety net.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, we've got only in the local magazine that we send out, the Home Care magazine, there are 3 of our council officers who have set up to work solely with getting these people off the streets. But they say, and I know it to be the truth, not all of these people that are on the streets welcome being given a home, would you believe? I've known them refuse to take homes, and they'd rather stop in their makeshift shelters. Yeah. But that, some of them have mental health issues as well, so we've got to work very carefully with
Absolutely.
them. Craig Jones. Councillor Harley, there was a discussion before when you were leader previously about working with Sandwell Council and Wolverhampton Council, utilising some of the free swimming initiatives which are available for their residents, for those in the north of the borough who are closer to their centres than the ones in Dudley.
I do recall this conversation. Obviously, we lost control on September the 26th last year. Black September for us, but never mind. Now being back in control for just over 5-6 weeks. So that's certainly an initiative that we can take up, and I'll be taking that up with the Cabinet member next week.
Good. Debbie Collins, with narrow roads and increasing of cars, there's a problem with cars parked half on the pavements. However, as a member of our TRA, Tenants and Residents Association, we've tried to get funding to ease this issue in our estates, but there are no funds available.
Okay. If Debbie wants to email Ask the Leader with specifics there on what street it is, what the issues are, then we can talk to our guys in highways to see what we can be done. There's an issue in Upper Gornal, at the top of the Holloway, where anyone that knows that area knows it's quite a narrow street, and it's two cars can't pass through, and there's no footpath for residents. I know work's due to start very soon. After years of campaigning, it was an issue that I resolved for the ward councillors, and officers have now got on with the task. And what they're going to do, they're going to widen that road and create a footpath.
Yes.
So where there's a will, there's a way. It's took many years of lobbying and trying to get the funding, and we've had to get the funding from other sources other than the council coffers. But that work will proceed soon on that particular part of the borough, which will create that pavement for people to walk through without fear of getting run over. So I would say to the lady, email me the specifics, and hopefully there's a scheme somewhere that can fit for that particular area. Can't promise it will be done overnight, but as we've proved in Upper Gornal, we can sometimes...
That's Zor Street, Vale Street.
Your Vale Street, overcome these issues. But it's not easy, but if I know the details, at least we can look at that.
Lee Shilvock says the junction of Pedmore Road with Pear Tree Lane is overgrown badly. If you're in a car, you can't see what's coming down the hill.
I agree, and we spoke about this at length before, and it's something that we need to address, and I would hope we can put something in the budget in the forthcoming year to deal with this, because, as I've said at length, we want our borough to look nice when people enter it.
Ross Oakley, we've been waiting 5 years for double yellow lines. We live in Mill Street, Briley Hill, and constantly getting blocked in or can't get on our drive due to the school parents. Something that happens everywhere there's a school, I'm afraid. Sooner or later there'll be an accident because of this inconsiderate parent parking. I've tried the school, I've tried the police, nobody wants to help. We could send the camera car around there, couldn't we?
I don't know if you want to explain a bit what the camera car is.
Yeah, we have a mobile camera car that goes round the area, and especially around the schools, and takes pictures of inconsiderate parking or illegal parking, and then they're followed up with fines. So we could certainly ask them to call round there. Mill Street, Briley Hill, we can certainly see what we can do for that one.
If Ross wants to email Ask the Leader again with the specifics, we can then pass that on to our traffic team who deal with all the TRLs, etc., and enforcement, and obviously try and get to that hotspot.
Yeah. Tom Brandt, another question I have is that in a previous question and answer session, you were reaping the benefits of passenger rail services to Briley Hill and Dudley. Since then, the West Midlands Mayor Andy Street has said that it will not happen, despite West Midlands Rail having to put it as a consideration in their franchise bid. Will the Borough of Dudley bring back rail services to Dudley and Briley Hill? A link up by Dr. Richard Beeching in the 60s. Yeah. I'm aware of that.
I would disagree there. The metro will happen. The funding is there. I think to Dudley by 2022, Briley Hill by 2023. And then there's the exciting prospect of trying to get that link to Stourbridge. And then there's also the project which we have in Dudley, and we're leading on with Dudley with ourselves in Coventry, is very light rail. Now this allows us to, if you look at metro as the branches to public transport, very light rail are the twigs that come off those branches. For instance, you go from Dudley to Briley Hill on the metro, you want to get to Russell Hospital. How much easier will it be to get on a tram from Briley Hill to Russell's Hall Hospital, or if you work at the Penzet Trading Estate, one of the largest trading estates in Europe, to go a little bit further on the tram to your place of work. We talk about trying to save the environment and make it better, use our cars less. This, I think, is a great initiative.
Yes. And
the tram track will work, very light rail will work. It'll be a lot less expensive than the current schemes that we're implementing. Obviously, it's fairly new, but the technology is there, the will is there, and I believe that we will have connections to our main train services within a few years from now.
Mm-hmm. This is something that came up on Cabinet the other night.
Okay.
Chris Blake, As a resident of Quarry Bank, there are a lot of concerns about the air quality issues on roads leading to Merry Hill, especially the High Street, which has the second highest levels of nitrogen dioxide in the borough. Whilst the Metro will serve Brierley Hill, do you believe anything can be done on the A4100 between Cradley Heath and Quarry Bank to reduce the impact?
Yeah, I do, Chris, and I think it's not with building new roads, it's not having flyovers, it's technology, and that technology is with fuelless cars, cars that don't rely on fossil fuels, electric cars. There are businesses in this borough that are now designing and building car batteries that take minutes to charge and that can drive the vehicles for hours. The council also has a responsibility, of course, to provide those charging points and more of them. And I think by eliminating the need to have cars that are powered by fossil fuels, I think that is the single most important thing we will do in the next century, in the 21st century. You know, we've had the industrial age, we've had great innovations and advances in technology, you know, in the 20th century, but I think the 21st century is where we possibly turn it back and really do make those efforts to help the environment, cut down on the pollution and emissions from vehicles. And the best way to do that is to not have cars that rely on petrol and diesel, but you have to provide a reliable replacement. And we're not quite there yet, but I believe the time is coming where we will be, because as I've said, there are companies in Dudley that do have the means to invest in that technology. And I think within a few years, we will see the great decline of fossil fuels used to power motor vehicles, and the reliance will be on electric cars, and electric cars that are reliable, and people are not afraid to swap instead of having diesel or petrol. I think that's the best way. To answer Chris's point a bit, to get an answer that helps him a bit sooner, I do think that the Metro will help. If people can get to Metro, he's succeeding and working, and we can have, as I've said, the twigs to link to the branches, which would be the very light rail part of the project. If we can get that up and running, then I think that will take a lot of cars off our busy areas. And I've talked to people in the rail industry, and they're rail enthusiasts, but they are very excited about this, because it could mean more train and tram usage in places that we've never even had it in the days of Beecham. And I'm quite excited about that.
Good. Ricky Jones, are there any plans to reduce the cost of getting a drop curve?
Ricky, not at the moment. It's not high on my list of priorities, but it is something that you know, we've obviously talked about. I do believe that the cost is too high. I would like to look at that, but it's not on our list of priorities at the moment.
Frankie,
precise about what he means about that. So
yeah. Whereabouts and what have you? Yeah.
And who?
And who? Yeah. Sarah Glaze, can we have a crossing by the Tesco garage in Wall Heath High Street? This is an area you'll know better.
I do know that.
This would help people to cross the busy road to go to the park. It might help people to slow down too. Okay,
we'll have to, I can't answer that yes or no here. All I can say to Sarah is that I'll ask our highways department to have a look in there. Yep. And if it's feasible and if it's required, we may be able to help. If it's not, then obviously the answer would be no, but we'll get them to have a look.
Okay. We seem to have had another...
You lost them?
I've lost the whole thing, Ian. Would you believe that? Everything's gone. Why is that all of a sudden? We seem to have lost the link, folks, so we'll go back to okay,
well, I think we're almost at the end now. It's almost 7 o'clock. So I think we probably need to look at wrapping this up right now. I hope you've found this as useful as we have. We've had some useful discussions around a lot of subjects. Any questions we've not managed to answer in the time, or for those of you that may want to come back in the next few minutes, we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. You can use asktheleader@dudley.gov.uk to send information through to us, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered. some important issues and subject raised tonight. I would ask those people who we've requested to contact us to do so, particularly on areas where there are fly tipping, weeds overgrown, where there are requests for pedestrian crossings. Send us that information, more details and contact details, and I'm quite happy to go out and meet residents and have a look for myself and make sure that we try and deal with these issues that have been raised.
Good.
In
And
the
I'm sorry about the technical issues. It's probably my fault.
It happens.
Because it's been happening to me all day.
Happens with the best of us.
Yeah.
In the meantime, thank you all for taking the time to have your say and share some of your ideas and concerns with us. And it's good night from me.
And good night from me, the two Ronnies.